Hello and welcome back to Over My Dead Pod. This is your host, Kate Carter.
I'm Kylie Caldwell.
And I'm Holly Spear.
And welcome to part two of our Jonestown Massacre episodes. So, if you did not listen to last week's episode, please go ahead and do that before you listen to today, because otherwise it's not really going to make sense.
Our first two-parter.
Yeah. I will say, as soon as we put out the first parter, I had multiple people text me or call me. They were like, this is it. This is cool. This is great. My mom called me, shout out Yolanta, and was upset that I said I went to two churches too many.
And that would get her, yep.
Yeah, sorry about that, mama. Anyways, okay, so we're just going to dig right into today's episode. We're in Jonestown, right? And Congressman Ryan and his group of reporters, family members, and now 14 of the former People Temple members have just made it to the airstrip. They're about to begin the boarding process on a little plane near Jonestown in Georgetown and head back to the United States. As they do this, a bus full of People's Temple members roll up behind them, get out, and begin shooting at them. What is known as the People's Temple Red Brigade, the members open fire with shotguns, handguns, rifles, and other members begin circling the plane. Congressman Ryan and four others were instantly killed by the gunfire, while the others were either able to play dead on the plane or run off to the nearby forest. Congressman Ryan had been killed after being shot more than 20 times. 20 times.
Because I just imagine he went there, to drum up some voters and do a big thing for his district, and then he gets shot 20 times.
Yeah. I'm going to say something later too, and you're going to be like, okay, that's a little absurd. The others assassinated that day were also NBC cameraman Bob Brown, RIP, that's really sad, Examiner photographer Greg Robinson, NBC reporter Don Harris, and actually one of the former members that was leaving, Patricia Parks. But as soon as the members shot down the congressman, they actually immediately radioed back to Jonestown stating that Congressman Ryan was dead. So it was basically like just a hit on the congressman. And if you notice too, I think it was him and four others that got killed, but there was it was a group of at over 20 people because it was 14 members that had left along with the group that was originally flying in. And so the rest of them were able to escape. Well, you would think if it was going to be this killing of sorts, they would have gone after the people. Well, they didn't. Once they shot down Congressman Ryan, they radioed back saying he's dead. And then they got the hell out of there. So it was 100% a hit.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting though, because I didn't know this part, when the group was leaving Jonestown, right before getting on the airstrip, Congressman Ryan had actually told one of the attorneys at the compound that once he was back in California, he was planning on issuing a report that said the People's Temple was, quote, in basically good terms, end quote. And I'm like, what the hell does this mean? Regardless of what the congressman had just experienced, when he originally had set out to Jonestown, he had a mission. He had 60 members that he was going to talk to at the People's Temple that he had heard names about. There were family members worried about them, blah, blah, blah. And none of these 60 members he talked to ended up wanting to leave. So that kind of gave the congressman, he was like, that's weird. Your family's telling me something completely different. It was just 14 members that wanted to leave as well, which you got to think it was 1,000 people that were there. So 14 out of 1,000 isn't a lot. And then also the congressman had this sense of feeling, even though he was attacked with a knife, which would kind of throw me for a loop, is that the people who wanted to leave weren't actually being forced to stay there. It was more so they didn't have a way to get off of Jonestown. There was no transportation. And also that he felt like there was peer pressure from the other members to stay. So he really didn't think that anybody was being forced to stay. So once the congressman's group left, that attorney that he had just talked to told everything to Jim. He reiterated everything. But in the end, Jim Jones stated to the attorney, quote, I have failed, all is lost, end quote. So that just, it doesn't matter what the congressman said at this point. Jim just kind of had it in his head, look, he probably thought this was a shit show. Someone just attacked him with a knife. There's people leaving. That's it. This is the end. But in reality, the congressman was like, oh, okay, not too bad. It could have been worse. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't gonna go home and tattle on everybody.
I wonder why. Or maybe he was just saying that so
And then he goes
wouldn't-
home and blows everything up. Probably he was like, I have to
Just
say
let me
this
get
so I don't
outta
like
here.
get killed. Yeah.
I've already been attacked with a knife. You guys are great people. I love what you're doing. I'm gonna go home now.
Yeah. I'll be
Yeah.
back and
This
become a
is
member.
so cute. I'm coming back. Don't
Oh my
worry.
God. What a cute place you guys have. So
I love it.
luxurious. So after the group's departure from Jonestown, leading to the airstrip, Jim's wife, Marceline, she's still around. She made a broadcast to all of the People's Temple's members on this like public address system that they had. And she stated like, everything's okay. Everyone go back to your houses. Everything's fine. Just go chill out for a little bit. But little did the members know that at this time, Jim and some of the higher ranked members started to prepare this large bathtub, basically. It was like a metal tub with grape flavorade, which is also another thing that I thought about too. Everywhere, you hear this saying, like, don't drink the Kool-Aid. It wasn't even freaking Kool-Aid. It was a flavorade. Like they
What
were
is
like
Flavor Aid?
Generic brand.
It's the generic brand, girl. Like, not good. Okay, but I'm about to botch all of these names, but just stay with me. So in the tub with the grape flavorade, there was, I shouldn't even say these. I can't even pronounce them. Diphenhydramine.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Promethazine, chlorocline, chlorhydrate, diazepam, and cyanide. So basically, this deathly mixture was prepared by Jim Jones and Jonestown in-house doctor, Dr. Larry Schnat. Schnat. Little side note, Dr. Larry was originally from Texas. He was actually a former methamphetamine addict, which is like great. Love that for a doctor. And Jim Jones pulled him off the street, probably in one of his Greyhound buses, assisted in him getting sober. And then after he was sober, Jim was like, you know what? Why don't you go to school to become a doctor? And he paid for all of his education. But the caveat was like, you go, I'll pay for your whole education to become a doctor. You have to be the People's Temple, like in-house doctor. So that's exactly what happened.
It's hard to become a doctor. How do you just find a homeless man and he actually does it?
Yeah, like he went through, he got his doctorate.
That's insane. I mean, good for him.
Yeah, that is crazy though.
But like he also was a part of the People's Temple, and he was the one that made the mixture to kill everyone. So like, we can't give him that much grace.
Up until this point.
Yeah. Good until that.
Yeah.
About 30 minutes after Marceline Jones' original broadcast to the members about them staying inside and everything's okay, Jim went on the same broadcast channel and told all the members to immediately report to the outdoor pavilion. At the exact time as the airstrip ambush was occurring, Jim Jones gave a final speech to his People Temple members back in Jonestown. Now, this final speech, which is all over the internet if you want to listen to it, is 44 minutes long. Because there is a lot of commotion going on in the background of this tape, instead of playing it for you guys, I'm actually just going to read some of it to you guys. So the following is taken from parts of Jim Jones's final speech. Quote, I've tried my best to give you all a good life, and in spite of what I've tried, a handful of our people, with their lies and deceptions, have made our lives impossible. There's no way to detach ourselves from what's happened today. Not only are we in a compound situation, not only are those who have left and committed the betrayal of the century, but some of them have stolen children from others, and we're in pursuit right now to kill those people. Those people stole our children. We will not sit here and wait for the aftermath of what's going to happen because of this airplane. It's going to be catastrophic, and it's almost happening here. It almost happened when the congressman was nearly killed here today. You can't steal people's children. You can't take off with people's children and not expect a violent reaction. If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace. What's going to happen here in a matter of a few minutes is that those people who left are going to die. I didn't plan it, but I knew it was going to happen. I never lied to any of you. So my opinion is that you be kind to children, you be kind to seniors, and you take the potion like they used to take it in ancient Greece, and you step over quietly. We are not committing suicide. We're committing a revolutionary act. We can't go back now because they're not going to leave us alone. But if anyone has a dissenting opinion, please speak. You have an opportunity, but if the children are left, we're going to have to butcher them. We can make a strike, but we'll be striking against people that we don't want to strike against. I'm going to tell you all now that without me, life has no meaning. I lived for you all. I will die with you all. I'm the best thing you've ever had. Look around. No one's ready to die. I look at all the babies and they deserve to live, but they don't deserve much more. They only deserve peace. So let's lay down our lives now and protest against what has been done to us. The criminality of people, the cruelty of people. But if you leave some of the children, and if you leave some of the elders, some of your neighbors, these people will come and they will make them suffer. You don't want your baby to suffer for the rest of its life, right? They will torture the remaining of us. We have to get a move on now. The medication is here. We have about 40 minutes. There's nothing to worry about. Everybody keep calm and try to keep your children calm. They're not crying from pain. It's just a little bitter tasting. The choice is not ours. It is out of our hands. When you step over, know there's no other pain on the other side. But for God's sake, let's get on with it. We've lived so much more than any other people. We've lived in this world for as long as possible. Let's get this done with. I call on you right now to quit exciting your children when all they're going to do is go to quiet rest now. Stop this nonsense and carry on. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Quickly, quickly, quickly. No more pain. All we're doing is laying down our lives. We're not letting them take our lives. We just want peace. Take a drink and go to sleep. That's what death is. It's really just sleep, you guys. We're all tired. If you don't follow my advice now, you're going to be sorry. They will do more harm to you than you will ever know, and you will regret not leaving with us. The world is no longer our home, so drink it now. Make sure your children and your seniors drink it with you. We didn't commit suicide. We committed an act of revolutionary suicide protesting the inhumane world. End quote. So throughout the 44 minutes of Jim Jones's speech, you can hear a mix of applauding, crying, laughing, and screaming being heard. Towards the end of the tape, you can hear children and babies screaming. They call out for their mamas, and men and women yelling for God. At the end of about 40 minutes, you hear silence. The only thing that can be heard is church music being played on a speaker in the background, but there's no longer screams. There's no longer applause or clapping. It's just silence for 4 minutes. On November 18th, 1978, Jim Jones ordered his congregation to drink a concoction of cyanide-laced, grape-flavored Kool-Aid type of drink. When some of the leading members of the People Temple began walking over deceased bodies, they did find some members that were playing dead and had decided to not take the drink. These people were then forcefully stuck in the neck or the head with a needle that contained the poison.
Oh.
Over 918 individuals died at Jonestown, and this included 276 children.
Who was alive, like, still to inject the people that pretended? Because I was about to ask that if there was people that pretended to drink it.
There was people that pretended to drink it, and they laid on the ground and played dead. Well, there was a group, and I'm assuming this is the same group as if you remember from the last episode, I talked about there was a higher power group that met often in a circle, and they like talk shit and like beat up people. It was the higher ups of the People's Temple. And so these people walked around as people were taking the potions, and basically like at the end when everyone's like supposed to be dead, like member wise, they walked around. If they weren't dead, they were being stabbed with the cyanide poison. So they were being murdered. And then those people then took the concoction themselves.
Wow. And nobody was like resisting. You said that like in his speech, he was like, if anybody has any, if anybody disagrees with this, like speak up. Like nobody did.
In the speech, because I didn't go into it because it was, oh my God, I should have played the speech for you too, a little bit of it. It's so much going on that while I was listening to it, I also had to go and look up a transcript. Like it was so much. There were a few people who spoke up during the speech. It was this whole thing of like, if we can't live in America and they're going to come and kill us, where can we go to seek refuge? And they brought up Russia. And so it was this whole big thing about like, don't we still have time, Jim, to like, won't Russia take us in? Won't the Soviets take us in? It went on for like 10, 12 minutes, like multiple people being like, we still have time to do this. Like, we're not ready to die. And that's why you continue to hear him say like, it's now or never. Okay. Yeah. So people did speak up, but I mean, in the end, a lot of people did commit the suicide, but it was mind-blowing to me to read, because I didn't know it, that
Yeah.
people were forcefully struck with needles. And this included 276 children. And those 100% were forced. All but 2 of these people died from the poisoning. It wasn't known until later, after talking with a handful of survivors, that on the November 18th death day, during the lunch that day, members were given out in the congregation. This is before the congressman was shot and stuff. So just keep this in your mind. The same day during lunch, everybody was eating grilled cheese sandwiches. Well, those sandwiches had been laced with sedatives. So this kind of makes the future suicide like easier to accept. So like people, once they were in the pavilion having like Jim Jones do this speech, they're drugged.
Yeah.
Like they're sitting there like, whatever, we'll take the poison, like this is great. But so it just it makes me think that this whole day was planned regardless.
I was going to say, I mean, it sounded like in the beginning when you were telling the story that it was kind of a spur of the moment like thing after the congressman was shot.
Right.
He freaked out. But obviously, if he's already drugging them earlier in the day to make them more like complicit,
it was planned.
Planned, yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was just drugging them so they were like on their best behavior for the congressman.
Ooh, true.
I don't know, because like it was only like a 40-minute span between the murder of the congressman to the suicide plan. That's pretty quick to plan that.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that maybe once because the congressman was there for like 2 or 3 days. I have a feeling once he showed up and that whole note thing happened, Jim was like, that's it. When he leaves, we're killing him. We're going to take out everybody. Like, I think it was planned.
I also have to like think about, didn't you say that he had done fake poisonings before? Like
there was a fake shooting.
I just wonder if like there's definitely some people like I would be thinking, okay, this is fake, like this is another like little.
Yeah.
He's going to heal us.
Another test. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then we're all going to come back. Yeah. Another thing too is during the mass suicide, or as we'll call it, mass murder event, the members were also surrounded by armed guards. So it kind of gave the members that feeling and a dilemma between death by poison or death by guard, like there was no out. At some point prior to the mass suicide, Jim Jones had sent a radio communication to the temple's headquarters in Jonestown. And this is where member Sharon Amos received instructions to, quote, take revenge on the temple's enemies and then commit revolutionary suicide, end quote. So at this point in time, when Sharon got this message, she was there by herself. It was just her family. She escorted her children into a bathroom. She held a kitchen knife and she killed her 2 youngest children. Krista, her child, was 11 years old. Martin was 10 years old. She stabbed them to death. And then she had her 3rd child, Leanne, who was 21 years old, cut her throat, and then she killed herself. So Sharon and her children's bodies were later found by surviving members Stephen, Tim, and Jim Jr. after they arrived at the headquarters in effort to stop the suicide. Stephen, Tim, and Jim Jr. weren't in Jonestown that day, these 3 guys, because they were at a local basketball game in Georgetown. So like they just like somehow like missed the whole mass. They didn't get the agenda for the whole mass suicide thing.
I remember this from one of the documentaries I watched. Jonestown had their own basketball team.
Yes.
And they were out playing a game on this day.
They were in Georgetown playing basketball against the like Guyana team. I'm like, I'm sorry. When I read that, I was like, wait, you guys survived because you were just like, they missed the whole like revolutionary suicide thing.
Also, they had a basketball team.
Is that not weird? Okay, so they found, unfortunately, the horrible bodies and everything. But
also, she was not drugged. Like, she just did this from a telegram?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Brutally murdered her children, her babies. Wow. Back to the pavilion at Jonestown. So Jim Jones was found lying in his chair, dead in the pavilion. And he was between 2 women's bodies that were on the ground. It's not hilarious, but his head was cushioned by a pillow. His death was caused by a single gunshot wound to his left temple that was later stated by a medical examiner as being consistent with being self-inflicted. To this day, the events at Jonestown are considered and constituted as the greatest purposeful loss of American civilian life in a deliberate act. It was passed on September 11th, 2001 for the most American lives lost in a single act.
I've always known about the Jonestown thing, but I mean, if you actually think about 900 people laying there dead, that is just haunting.
And you guys are looking at the slideshow too. There's the pictures for
Brutal.
those who want to look. I will say it is graphic, but there are pictures on the internet of just the bodies all throughout. It's just a field. It looks like a movie scene. Like,
and I mean, we've seen like body pictures before and talked about them on this podcast where, you know, they're horrific, bloody and gory. And these are just like, these are so different because they're so haunting. Like, it's just this.
There's no blood. There's no blood. Everyone's face down. In the end, there were actually 3 high-ranking People's Temple member survivors, and they claimed that they were given an assignment and therefore able to escape, the mass poisoning. So these 3 survivors were Tim Carter and his brother Mike, and then another member named Mike Prokes. So these 3 men were all given luggage that contained $500,000 and also sealed envelopes personally by Jim Jones. The 3 of them were told to deliver the money in envelopes to the Soviet embassy in Georgetown, Guyana. The envelope ended up containing 2 passports and 3 letters. In the letters, there were instructions left to give all of the People's Temple's assets to the Communist Party of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, along with the instructions on the types of banks to send the money to, because, quote, as communists, we want our money to be of benefit for help to oppressed people all over the world, end quote. In the letters, it stated there was over $7.3 million to be transferred from the People's Temple's assets.
Wait, 7.3 million that time money or today's money?
That time money.
Damn.
But just remember, you've got 900 something people that Jim Jones took all of their money, all of their assets, all of their houses were sold. He took all of their money. And he also put out it was very fraudulent. So, but these 3 men, the 3 survivors, they actually decided to escape Jonestown. They ditched the money and the envelopes, but at some point after going through the forest, they were apprehended outside of Georgetown attempting to catch a boat.
They ditched the money?
Well, it's fraudulent money. I mean, but they were like, they saw what was happening and they were like, hell no. Like, we're out. We don't want to be a part of this. Like, we need to run away really quickly.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to send you guys a video link and you're going to watch about 2 minutes of it.
Identify yourselves.
My name is Tim Carter. Mike Carter.
Where have you been until now?
We've been at police headquarters under protective custody. Not under arrest, but just under protection.
Where were you last Saturday?
We were in Jonestown.
How did you get out?
Well, we have been asked, before this had all started, we have been asked by a woman named Maria Katsaris he and I were asked to help this gentleman over here to help deliver a suitcase. And he said it would be heavy, he's going to need some help. So we agreed to do that. He said, I've been through so many times today, so many reporters, I don't know. Anyway, just as things started happening is when we got out and we ran for our lives.
What did you see before you ran?
Well, when I went by the kitchen, I heard a lot of screaming and people crying. And so I went up by the pavilion and I saw mothers kneeling down holding their babies, people crying, and I saw my wife holding my son who's dead.
What did you see?
I wasn't near the pavilion at any time of this happening. I had walked by approximately 200 yards away from it. I saw a lot of people there who were standing outside of it. It looked to be just a mass of people, no organization to it. But they were all standing outside of the pavilion, and I couldn't make of it. I heard a guy talking over the PA system in there saying some things. I couldn't make it out. I didn't hear anything else in there.
Can you imagine you're standing there like you look over and your wife and your son are dead, but like your wife poisoned your son?
It's crazy. So they essentially like walked in while it was.
That's why they were like, peace. This is like, we're out. Like, there's no way. Because imagine walking in with like half of it being done. And you see people, it takes, cyanide is an instant, you know?
Yeah, this is like a split second decision. And we're like, okay, I'm going to escape and I'm going to have to live with this thought for the rest of my life, or I'm going to join in.
Yeah.
At that point, it'd be kind of hard, like to sit there and watch, to make that decision, seeing like your wife and your kid dead and choosing to go on, you know?
Yeah. In the moments that were leading up to the final speech at Jonestown 2, Jim Jones actually contacted his two sons. Like I said, they were in Georgetown playing in a basketball tournament. Absolutely nuts. And he told them what was about to take place. And he told his two boys that they should kill anyone who escapes and that they should take the poison themselves and die. Weird enough, his two sons absolutely refused. They were like, we're not doing that. And what they did is they actually called the People's Temple in San Francisco and said, absolutely do not do anything right now. Like, you're probably about to get communication to do something. Don't even look at the communication. We're in charge. Jim is no longer in charge. Like, listen to us. So they stopped the San Francisco like People's Temple members from doing this killing as well, which is like crazy.
Good for them.
Yeah. So while the mass poisoning was taking place, I said it earlier, but there were two lawyers that were at the compound. They got word from Congressman Ryan's company that people were upset in Jonestown and that something might be taking, like some dangerous thing might be taking place soon. So they kind of like got a heads up on this, which is another reason why I think this was all planned ahead of time. So those two lawyers, they were named Gary and Lane. They heard this news and they were like, we're out. We don't want to be killed. They immediately fled the compound by walking through the jungle and into Port Katuma. So while they were in the jungle running away, they recalled later on hearing screams and gunshots taking place. Another survivor was named Stanley Clayton. This is absolutely adorable. Okay, well, no, this is not adorable, but just not adorable when people murder each other. Another survivor named Stanley Clayton was able to escape the killings after he witnessed multiple mothers with their babies go to a tub that was filled with a color liquid. These mothers would then fill a needleless syringe with the liquid, squirt it into their baby's mouth before putting some in their mouths. Clayton said that the poison seemed to work about 5 minutes for the babies and about 20 to 30 minutes for adults. He quickly realized that he was not going to do this to himself, and he fled to the jungle. At some point, another member named Odell Rhodes offered to fetch a stethoscope for Jim Jones. Like, Jim literally was asking for one. Odell was like, I'll get you one. He went and hid under a building on the compound until he only heard silence. So like, he also was like, I'm not doing this. I'm hiding. And then there were actually two other People's Temple members who somehow escaped their deaths. And this is what was adorable. Those are two members, Grover Davis, and I don't even know how to say this first name, Hyacinth Thrash. So Grover Davis was 79 years old and hard of hearing. So he actually missed the announcement that went over on the speakers for all the members to assemble together. And he ended up like later on walking out of a building and he saw like dead people lying on the ground. So he quickly laid down right where he was and pretended to be dead.
Oh, good.
He lived. He's a survivor, which is like nuts. And then the other survivor, Hyacinth Thrash, was 76 years old and actually was there at the assembly and realized what was happening during the speech. Well, she somehow managed to walk out of the assembly and go to the bathroom that was in her bedroom, like in the house area. And then she hid under her bed for over 2 hours. So these two older people of the compound, they were like, one of them was deaf, basically, heard nothing, had no idea what was going on. The other one was like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to go to the bathroom and then just go hide.
I really hope that I would have been a survivor and not somebody that was like played into that, you know?
What if they like what if they poisoned your dogs? You would be like, take me with you.
Yeah, no, that's all that would have to happen.
No, Holly would be the one to sleep through the whole thing.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I would.
Oh my god.
No, I'd be
absolutely.
late to the meet. I'd be late to get
and everyone's dead.
Everybody's dead and I just
like What did
Run
I
away.
miss?
What happened?
Yeah. Okay. I didn't write this in my script, but I'm just gonna say it to you anyways because it's really, really sad. They did poison all of the dogs that were on the compound.
Oh,
No.
get out of here.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna tell you guys, but then after I just said that, I was like, you know what? Let's have a really, yeah. They poisoned
Oh,
all of the dogs that were at the compound.
I didn't even know
I
there were
hate
dogs
poison
there.
them.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
So
Wait,
I
why did
know,
the dogs have to go?
right? Like, there was no reason. There was no reason.
No.
So one of the members that I spoke about, Odell, he was the one that got the stethoscope for Jim. He was actually the one that got the police involved. So around 7:30 p.m., Rhodes left his hiding place at Jonestown. He walked through the jungle to Port Katuma, which was 5 miles away. There, he went straight to a police station and told the Guyanese authorities that he believed hundreds had just died in a mass suicide. Guyanese state pathologist Dr. Leslie Mutu was one of the first people to arrive at Jonestown after the deaths. Dr. Mutu later stated that when he was told about needing to go to Jonestown, he was definitely not mentally prepared in any manner for what he was about to walk into. Quote, there were bodies everywhere you look. Some were in straight lines, some were on top of each other, but most of them were holding hands or holding each other, end quote. Which, if you guys now look at the PowerPoint pictures, you'll see there's a lot of them that are holding each other. And that makes me real, especially I think there's a picture I put on there. Oh my God. I'm not even kidding you. I teared up like looking through these pictures of with the babies and the children.
It's a bunch of people laying in the field, but then you zoom in and it's families. They're all like all holding hands or like their arms are
Yeah.
over each other.
Yeah. It's yeah,
It was
it's
sad.
really sad. Even though police and doctors arrived on the scene within a few hours of the mass suicide, the bodies were actually rapidly decomposing due to the tropical heat. Also, a rainstorm had just gone by, and the swarms of animals and insects that were located on the property. I mean, they were literally in the middle of the jungle. So, in fact, once the US military arrived the next day to help move the bodies back to America, some of the bodies were so badly decomposed that the personnel had to use shovels to pick them up. That's within
Ew.
24 hours. Like
Dang.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
For the following 4 to 5 days after the suicides, it wasn't clear on how many people had just perished at Jonestown because these bodies were continuously being found. I mean, if you look at the pictures, it's all over the compound, or it's just bodies. At first, the US government wanted to bury the bodies in a mass grave in Jonestown, but the Guyanese government was against that, and they told them to get the bodies out of their country. They actually said it was an American problem dumped on their laps, which 100% good for the Guyanese for like saying that, like that's because America was like, let's just all bury them in Jonestown, not have the resources to like bring them back. And the Guyanese are like, absolutely not.
We're a poor country in South America. We're not going to let this taint our image.
Right. I mean,
Have
it
a massacre.
obviously did. So
Yeah.
no matter what, yeah. One of the People's Temple Red Brigade members who was arrested at the airstrip during the shooting, that person's name was Larry Layton. So Larry was one of the members that fired a gun at several people on board the airplane. And he was actually found not guilty of attempted murder when he went to trial in the Guyanese court system. He stated in his defense, and it worked, that he was brainwashed by Jim Jones. But after Larry was let go by the Guyanese police, he was quickly deported back to the US. And there in San Fran, the US Marshal Service picked him up. They were like, yeah, no, you're getting in trouble. So unfortunately, as we know, Larry was not allowed to be charged for the same offense again. So this time he was actually tried under a federal statute that was against assassinating members of Congress and internationally protected people. Larry was then convicted of conspiracy and of aiding and abetting the murder of Congressman Ryan and the attempted murder of Richard Dwyer. So Richard Dwyer was one of the guys there with Congressman Ryan. He was the deputy chief of mission for the U.S. Embassy of Guyana. And though Larry ended up being convicted, he was actually paroled in 2002. So to this day, unfortunately, because there's nobody left, Larry was the only person who was ever held criminally responsible for the Jonestown events. So in the years following Jonestown, the 918 bodies were placed in various locations throughout the US. Some, though, never made it out of Jonestown due to their decomposition. There was a cemetery in Oakland, California that stepped up willing to bury about 410 of the unclaimed bodies. This cemetery was able to bury about 40 people a year, but at some point they ended up reaching their max capacity and they had to cremate the remaining bodies and put them in a columbarium near the mass grave. So these 410 people were finally at their resting place, but they were never named. Like they were never claimed. The other half of the deceased, fortunately, were able to be retrieved by their family members. There's a lot more I could have gone into about like the whole burial of these bodies and stuff like this, but it was such a lengthy it was years of trying to get the bodies claimed. They were all
900
everything.
people.
Yeah, 918, and it was all, everything was decomposed. And then also like there weren't records for everyone. Some family members didn't even know their people were over there. They hadn't spoken to them in years. So like it was a complete shit show.
Bussing people in off the streets. Like you have no idea who those people
Homeless
really are.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Currently deserted and left to be reclaimed by the jungle, the Jonestown compound was first taken care of by the Guyanese government and people following the mass suicide. So in the early 1980s, once the bodies had been removed, the property was like kind of taken care of. The government decided they were going to use the compound to occupy refugees that were coming in for Laos for a few years. But at some point, the buildings and grounds after these refugees were gone, the buildings and the grounds were looted by local Guyanese people. But weird enough, like I found this interesting, the looters never once took over the compound. Like no one lived there. No one wanted to take it over because they literally did not want to be associated with the People's Temple suicides.
That's some bad juju.
Yeah. That's what that's a mass grave,
Probably.
regardless if their body's removed. Yeah, that's bad juju. So in the mid 1980s, most of the property was actually destroyed in a fire. In 2003, a television crew, along with a pilot who was a part of the original Jonestown cleanup crew, went back to Jonestown and they discovered that it was dense with vegetation and jungle life. Only a few things were left remaining: an old mill, the remains of a tractor, a generator, a filing cabinet, and a fuel pump. The pilot led the film crew to where the former site of the infamous Jim Jones final speech pavilion once stood. And there they found a giant steel drum, an organ, and a large bed of daisies growing where the People's Temple's bodies once laid. And that is the story of the Jonestown Massacre.
That was a lot more detailed than I ever knew. So that was really good.
It's just a shit story.
Yeah.
It's still confusing why, I mean, one, why at all, but two, why then? Like they knew the congressman was coming.
Yeah.
Well, if you even remember in the first episode going over this, there was a point where Jim Jones, this is prior to them moving to Guyana, is that Jim went to a conference like in San Fran and he said something about like, I'm suicidal right now. So like, I understand your people's feelings. And like in that moment, that for me would have been like, okay, so he's been suicidal for years. Right. And then there was another thing that said some of the former members were like, yeah, we used to practice assassinations during like mass. I'm under the understanding that for years this has been coming. He just needed the perfect time to do it.
There is one thing you didn't say, but I wanted to bring it up.
No, please.
I mean, feeding into like people's, I don't know if like delusion's the right word, but like they were brainwashed. Obviously, they're in a cult.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of mental health issues too, like a lot.
Yeah. When they're in Jonestown, they had that speaker system they made the announcements on. When they first got there, it was pretty peaceful, but he would play his sermons over those speakers nonstop, like all day at full volume.
Yeah. That's brainwashing at its finest.
So people were already a little nutso before the drugs.
That's crazy. Yeah.
But you also have to remember they're being drugged in some manner without them knowing.
Yeah.
Practically the whole time they're there.
Yeah, and then you're drugged and you're listening to these sermons nonstop, and you have this godlike figure leading you.
I was going to say, and you believe he is this godlike figure. So like they don't think he's just a person; they think he literally is a prophet.
Yeah,
and also like it reminds me of the tactics or like techniques where we've heard about. I don't know if we've talked about this, but where to torture people, you play like a song on repeat or you play something on repeat. It's almost like
yes,
it makes people go crazy after a while. I feel like
yeah.
No, they do that in Guantanamo Bay. They play like screamo music at like
That's
full
a
volume.
I was gonna
Nonstop.
say, so like I'm not gonna go into specific details because I'm not I'm not allowed to, but there's certain military things during trainings where they will play music nonstop.
spill the beans.
Literally am not cannot. But it's a real thing. I mean, it's like one song for days not being stopped. You know, like that would make you go nuts itself.
Yeah.
Then add on drugs.
Yeah.
Then, you know, like it's absolutely, yeah, it's crazy.
That is.
And with that, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. If you want even more information, including photos of the case, you can check us out on our blog at overmydeadpod.com. Be sure to leave us a review wherever you're listening to and check us out on social media at Over My Dead Pod. And we will see you next week with another case. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.